Not a happy Sunday for the Jets in Seattle as Gang Green lost their fifth straight game, 23-6, to the Seahawks to be officially eliminated from the playoffs for the 12th straight year. Mark Cannizzaro, sports columnist for the New York Post, joins me now from Seattle to break down the Jets' loss. Mark, how's it going?
Well, it's going fine my way, but not so well the Jets' way, Dex. Yeah, it was a tough day out there, and a very curious day for the Jets because, frankly, this was the team that desperately needed to win this game, had to win out this week and next week, and they just did not play like a team that looked desperate. They came out kind of flat, which is inexcusable. It's inexplicable. It's inexcusable, and they got what they deserved at the end of the day, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think flat is a word a lot of fans would use to describe their performance on Sunday, Mark. So let's start with Mike White. There was pressure, you could say, on him to save the Jets season, and the team, they struggled to move the ball against Seattle. What did you make of White's play today, and what do you see as his future with the team going forward?
Well, starting with his play today, Dexter, there was a lot of rejoicing amongst Jets fans that that Zach Wilson had been benched and Mike White was being brought in. He's a terrific story. He's a tough kid, coming back from the cracked ribs. I mean, still playing with ribs that aren't right. He didn't play well today. They got off to a decent start. The Seahawks defense is not that good. So, they ran the ball a little bit better than they had run it for the last 3 weeks. And he still couldn't really take advantage of that. And as Robert Saleh said when we spoke to him after the game, some of the throws started to get away from him a little bit. Mike was very, very stand up and transparent after the game. He basically said, look, those guys, because he was asked about the ribs, and he said, listen, I was cleared medically. I practiced all week. He said, those guys in that locker room, deserve a standard of play that I did not play up to today. He was really, really disconsolate is the best word I can use for the way Mike was. As far as his future, it's very up in the air right now. I mean, there was a lot of talk going into this game. Hey, if he wins these next 2 games, the Jets get in the playoffs. He's going to be their starter next year. He's got a chance to, kind of seize this opportunity, which was certainly true. But the bottom line is Mike is, he's still a young guy, only making his 7th start in the NFL. And we just don't know enough about him. And today was certainly a demerit, for lack of a better way to put it, in terms of him, moving on to become a starter. I mean, he'll have next week in Miami, I'm quite certain. But again, that's going to be a meaningless game, kind of hard to judge a player by. So the Jets quarterback situation is extremely murky for next year. I mean, I think there was a hope that Mike was going to play well today and they'd win and then have a chance to go to Miami and maybe win in Miami, and all of a sudden they're a playoff team. And then he's a candidate for that starting job next year. But right now, I feel like he kind of stepped back to a candidate to be maybe their backup again next year, as Zach Wilson perhaps is as well. There really isn't a starting quarterback in the Jets' future right now that we're staring at, if you will. So it's very murky, and today, to me, muddied the situation up a little bit more than it already was.
Yeah, it's a situation that is definitely not clear as far as who will be the Jets starting quarterback going forward in the future for the 2023 season. And I think, Mark, the offense, they're going to get criticized a lot following this loss to the Seahawks, but should fans also be disappointed with the team's defensive effort that we saw in Week 17?
Dexter, teams always talk about complementary football, right? That seems to be one of the buzzwords. We want to play complementary football. Well, as I mentioned in my column for tomorrow's Post, the Jets did play complementary football. They stunk in all phases, and they really did. I mean, special teams, they were no good. Defensively, they gave up a 60-yard run on the first offensive play from scrimmage. This place, Lumen Field, where they played today in Seattle, is the loudest stadium in the league. These fans are rabid. It's a great atmosphere. Your goal when you go into a place like that is to quiet that place. And giving up a 60-yard run on the first play from scrimmage, not a good way to quiet the crowd, okay? So really, and I talked to C.J. Mosley afterwards, Jets linebacker, and Sheldon Rankins actually told me when I spoke to him that 60-yard play kind of messed them up, not only momentum-wise and psychologically, but schematically, because it shook them up a little bit, trying to figure out what went wrong, how to fix it. And he said it took us about a 3 series to where before we settled down. The problem is the defense gave up points in the first three offensive series of Seattle, and they'd given up 17 points. And the Jets' offense is not designed to be coming back from a 2-touchdown deficit. And that's essentially, where they were. They were on the back foot the entire game. And, Mike White and the Jet offense is not, they're not built to be slinging the ball around and getting into a shootout. So, the Jets defense could say as much as it wants, which it did after the game, hey, we settled down after the first quarter. The first quarter was too late. It was 17 points. A minute into the second quarter, they were down 17-3. So, yeah, this game was not on Mike White solely, without question. He didn't play well, but the defense really put the Jets behind the 8 ball from the beginning.
Absolutely. It got late very early for the defense in this one. And Mark, when you look at the whole picture with the Jets, they were 7-4 at the end of November, and then they collapsed. Some people will call it that. This team has had quite some memorable collapses in franchise history. Where do you rank this one with them losing 5 straight in December and now January?
Well, I mentioned in the column, you look back in '94, ironically, with Pete Carroll, who's the Seattle coach. They were 6-5 and riding high, and that was the infamous Dan Marino fake spike game. That spurred on a 5-game losing streak. They finished 6-10, and Carroll got fired after 1 year. You got a couple others. 2008, they were 8-3 with Brett Favre, and then his elbow or shoulder goes numb, and they end up finishing 9-7 out of the playoffs. And Eric Mangini, who didn't have any interest in wanting Favre in the first place, ends up getting fired. You got some of the Rex Ryan, year when they needed to break. Actually, they needed to be Buffalo against Rex Ryan in 2015 at the last game of the year. Lost it. So they've had a lot of these things. As I mentioned in my column, this is old hat for Jet fans, and it's getting old. It's a lot of baggage that these fans are carrying, and this is just another. You just put this on the, slide over on the mantle of disappointment and put this trophy right next to the last number of them. It's just demoralizing.
It's demoralizing for the Jets fans. And at the end of the 2022 season, there's a lot of Jets fans already saying same old Jets, unfortunately, as they will not make the playoffs for the 12th consecutive year. That is the longest streak in the NFL. That is Mark Cannizzaro, New York Post sports columnist. Mark, thank you for your time from Seattle. Safe travels home, okay? Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Dex. Good talking to you.
Always.